Hi everybody and welcome to Readers of the Lost Art, Les Amuse Bouche. Bite-sized pieces from the chef's imagination that don't belong on the main menu. And today we'll be looking at Le Champ de Choux, The Cabbage Field by Camille Pissarro from 1873. You see, this channel delivers exotic, extravagant, glamorous paintings. What's better than a cabbage field? But here you go. And part of the reason for doing the amuse-bouche section is so that it can be a bit more of a subjective interpretation. You know, I don't have to drown you with scholarship of various types. But for me, this gives me the involuntary memory of, admittedly rarely, given that I come from the UK, but atmospheric summer mornings. And I specifically remember being a child, about 8, 9-ish, being at primary school in America. I think it's first grade beginning when you're 6, so this is maybe 3rd grade, 4th grade. And mornings just seemed, the atmosphere seemed so much more intense. And compared to when you're an adult, especially after the advent of COVID, things smelt so much more intensely. But I specifically remember very early in the morning when you just arrive at school and maybe you go onto the playground before the classes start, and there was just an intensity that I felt in the air, that partly because I never get up early anymore. I'm a night owl, so if I get up before 10 a.m, something's gone wrong. I've probably wet the bed. And when occasionally, you know, I do get up early because I haven't been able to sleep, I get a sense of what I had when I was a kid. So I live in the countryside, not a million miles from views like this. So I do get the early morning atmosphere, but not half as much as when I was a kid. And I just love the way Pissarro has captured that hint of mist in the air. And it's interesting, I'm going to be quoting shortly excerpts from an art critic, T.J. Clarke, and he discusses, it's in a book about Cézanne, Paul Cézanne, because Pissarro was a mentor of Cézanne. So he's talking about Pissarro's early influence, and hence he starts to talk about this painting. And he says it may be early evening or early morning, but it just doesn't feel to me, and this is interesting in the sense that, you know, different people have different subjective responses to a painting, but that just strikes me as so obviously morning. And I think the hint of mist would back me up, because I think at night time, if that was a hot day in France, the mist would have evaporated. You wouldn't get that misty effect. That's before it gets too hot. So I don't want to bore you to death, because I'm going to do I love Pissarro. I think he's massively underrated. You know, all the other impressionists get far more attention than him. But just other, not just my subjective impressions, but other aspects about the painting. There's on the left-hand side, as we look at it, I think they're fruit trees of some type, but the way in which the filigree almost of the twigs, so delicately done, which helps give a sense of depth, because you can sense them in the foreground, and obviously there's a deeper background behind. And I'm reluctant to ruin it with but you looked at it long enough. I was going to say I'm reluctant to ruin it with my dreaded laser pointer. But in the back there, you can see, for want of a better word, please, class warriors, don't get offended, but that's a peasant. It's a peasant, I tell you, in the background. But it's I haven't got my right glasses on, but I think that's purplish, bluish, which I think helps behind. There's just a misty, that it's, you know, the colour of the clothing, I think, helps match. I'll use the Yeah, you can see the way the figure, the person leaning over doing work, is quite deliberately blurred, and there's the blurring extends to the foliage behind him or her. And likewise, the woman further forward in the painting, slightly clearer, but still you can't make out obviously any facial features or anything. But my favourite bit of the whole painting, I think, is this area here, the dark area. So if we can go back in there. So there's another figure almost directly behind the woman in the foreground with who's got some type of basket, and there's a darker figure at the base of the tree. But I love if we go back out again, what I like is in a field, it's just a cabbage field, the name gives it away. It's not complicated, but there's that hint of darkness, which, as we know, hello darkness, my old friend, I'm particularly attracted to these aspects of paintings. And it's, on its own, maybe, it wouldn't imply that much. It's just the dark shadows. But then I'll be doing a whole section. There's an American philosopher called John Sallis, and he did a beautiful book that, from memory, I think it might just be called Shades, but it's the major theme, as the name suggests. It does what it says on the tin. It's about shade as a concept and how it's represented in art. And so there's a whole, subgenre of people interested in shade, believe it or not. But shade is fascinating because it's dark. But on a day like this, it would be incredibly welcoming. As the day gets hotter, shade would be at a premium. So there's the brightness of the foreground and the field itself. There's the hint of darkness as you go back. And you can just see the hint of the darkness here is complemented by the gables of these houses. And I think there's a chimney stack there that you can see through the branches, the very thin branches. And I don't think it's unusual because T.J. Clarke he's known for his social histories, and he's, if not a card-carrying Marxist, he's definitely overtly left-wing and proud of it. But I don't think, at least in the book on Cézanne where he discusses this painting, I don't think he makes the link, but it strikes me as you've got the peasants in the field doing the hard work, and if you were going to give a political analysis of what doesn't seem to be a political painting at all, you've got these imposing, they must be on higher ground, I'm guessing, or they're very tall, bourgeois, almost chateau-like. But I think T.J. Clarke refers to, he assumes there's a hill or there's raised ground behind these trees. But I don't think, judging from that chimney stack, that could be just a standard, tall house. But this idea that behind this almost idyllic field, on the one hand it's almost idyllic, it's beautiful, even though it's just a cabbage field. The atmosphere is presented beautifully, but on the other hand, it's backbreaking. As you can see, this character in the background, it's backbreaking work. And the day's only just started. And in the background, you have these almost menacing signs of probably the people or one of the families that owns this land upon which these people are working. So like I say, I think old TJ missed a trick on this one, unless I apologise in advance if somewhere else in his work he does discuss the class angle. On a side note, it always amuses me that very few people ever discuss class with a flat vowel. It's always posh people talking about class without sensing the irony. But anyway, it's one of my bugbears. So, to ruin it, as I always say with my Fizzog, What I love about this painting is just, I've mentioned, the personal take I have on it. It's this Proustian involuntary memory, which links to the video I've done on muscle memory and Proust. It's the things it conjures up in me that reminds me of childhood, even though I was never working in a cabbage field. I hasten to add that my parents would have been taken off by social services if in the middle of Liverpool I was carted out to work in a cabbage field. But it's just this timelessness. It's this moment in time, which I'll talk about in a second, because what I think's incredible about what he's achieved, even though, again, if you weren't prepared to contemplate it, you'd just have your immediate impression of being, it's a field of cabbages. Where actually, it's so much more, because it's giving a sense of almost, if you want to get really philosophical and poetical and possibly pretentious, it's time in the countryside is arguably different. So people have been doing this type of work since time immemorial. Yet Pissarro's also showing you a unique moment in place and time, to paraphrase Walter Benjamin. So it's both instantaneous and it gives the sense of permanence and solidity at the same time. Which neatly segues onto a quote from This Is T.J. Clark, where he talks about the moment in parenthesis. And he says that because we'll go back to the painting shortly. But on the left-hand side, there's a partial signature in the painting by Pissarro. And on the right-hand side, there's another signature. So T.J. Clark describes this as the painting being in parenthesis, in other words, in brackets, bracketed by Pissarro's signature. And he says the two signatures speak to duration, to an action, a conclusion, a caring more than once. They put the moment in parenthesis. Immediacy in a picture, then, is different from instantaneity. It has to do with wholeness, the felt totality of the moment on display. He goes on to say, and I've picked out from the quote you're about to see, I think this is a great phrase, wait for the moment at which the known disappears. So in the full context of the actual quote, sustained attention to anything, let alone the relentless concentration and elaboration of vision that comes from taking painting seriously, transforms the parameters of seeing. Loosen the hold of lightness in painting and wait for the moment at which the known disappears. Let the tree in the half dark replace it. Well, I just think it's beautiful writing, and I'll be going back to this book. It's a stunning book, If These Apples Should Fall, which is a reference to a study, a still life of apples that Cézanne painted. And Ernst Bloch wrote a book called, is it Die Zeist Utopia, The Spirit of Utopia. And he mentions If These Apples Should Fall. He makes reference to a painting that I'll go into detail that Cézanne painted, and the idea is that this still life of apples, it looks like they're almost going to fall off the painting. But anyway, you've distracted me from the actual Pissarro. But I just love this T.J. Clark at his best when he says sustained attention to anything, let alone the relentless concentration and elaboration of vision that comes from taking painting seriously. So that's sustained attention to anything. That's the exact opposite of the non-sustained attention, the instantaneity of Instagram, TikTok, the time of TikTok, attention spans of less than 5 seconds. Well, that's university students I'm talking about. Transforms the parameters of seeing. and loosen the hold of likeness in painting. So photographs and videos are all about technical verisimilitude, technical correspondence with reality. You know, a camera only shows what it records. The interpretation is limited to the human operator, and even that, I'd argue, is obviously a hell of a lot less than an actual good painter. So if you loosen the hold of likeness in painting, now I'm not getting radical, I'm not advocating Jackson Pollock going all drippy, but the idea that just loosen the hold of likeness in painting and wait for the moment at which the known disappears. So in the muscle memory longer talk that I do, and I cite the exchange between Hamlet and Horatio, where Horatio talks about the sight of Claudius, the ghost of Hamlet's father, dead father. And he says, "'Tis wondrous strange." And then Hamlet says, "As a stranger, welcome it." And I talk about in that video the concept of being more at home with what is strange. And I think that's what good art does for you. So I think that links with this phrase, for the moment at which the known disappears. And then let the tree in the half dark replace it. In other words, let the resonance, let the enigma of what an artist can do with something in the half dark, let that replace your obsession with accuracy, verisimilitude, and direct correspondence. That's beautiful writing. So I'll just leave you with the image again, and I go back to this all the time. If I want to, you know, think happy thoughts of vaguely innocent childhood on a, as I said, incredibly rare, atmospheric, beautiful British summer's day, which are as rare as hen's teeth, I hasten to add. But I always just think of this painting. So until the next time, all the very best. Bye.